Hey, Professor Gertrude. For my final project, I decided to do a curation. When we read Birthing a Mother in class, we got an in depth glimpse into the world of surrogacy for Jewish Israeli women. It seemed like for a lot of us, grasping the concept of surrogates as a separate entity who are easily able to disassociate with the fetus was a difficult concept. In the US, the narrative of surrogacy perpetrated by the media paints a very different picture. In this curation, I'd like to examine all the different aspects surrounding surrogacy in the United States, from media portrayals to policy to the darker side of gestational pregnancies, and to what I found to be the most honest platform for discussing surrogacy. I wanted to start with celebrities in surrogacy, as the news of their choice to use a third party usually gains the most attention. There's not a very open dialogue about surrogates themselves with most famous people. I researched several of Hollywood's elite, and many of them merely speak to the troubles of infertility. Very little is known about their surrogates besides that they delivered healthy babies. Tyra Banks is one of the few to speak specifically about her surrogate, calling her an angel. These high profile cases of surrogacy are helping move it in a mainstream way, however slowly since very few words are said about surrogacy or the process of surrogacy. I imagine that for public figures like Jimmy Fallon and Elizabeth Banks, protecting the little privacies you have are important, especially concerning such a delicate practice. Lucy Liu was one of the few to speak about her surrogacy, as it's considered non-traditional. Liu doesn't actually have reproductive complications that endanger or prevent pregnancy. She instead chose to have a baby gestationally through a surrogate because she felt she was so busy with work and everything was going so well that she didn't want to jeopardize her career by getting pregnant. She's now incredibly happy with her non-traditional family and career and says she has no regrets. The narratives running through Hollywood TV shows and movies, however, are a very different story. Of the popular surrogate movies I found, all were dramas that portrayed the surrogate mother as a liar, delusional, or dangerous. Lifetime themselves have done 3 movies about a fictional couple who enrolls the help of a birth mother to have a child, those movies being The Surrogate, The Surrogacy Trap, and When the Bow Breaks, respectively. In each film, the surrogate is depicted as a psychopath. Golden Surrogacy, a reproductive health clinic in Chicago, wrote an article speaking out against these representations by Hollywood. Most of these characters are not mothers. They are not in stable relationships, they don't have support systems, they don't live in surrogate friendly states. These movies tend to portray surrogates as having malevolent, ulterior motives for undergoing the process. They either want to kill the intended mother or run away with the baby, they wrote. And not to say this hasn't happened before, but rarely, if ever, to the drama and extent that companies like Lifetime show. The case that kicked off the question of surrogacy rights, however, wasn't dissimilar to every potential mother's worst nightmare. In the mid-80s, William and Elizabeth Stern wished to conceive but felt unable due to Mrs. Stern's multiple sclerosis and worries about health complications. They wrote up a contract with Mary Beth Whitehead, a married woman with 2 children. Things are going fine up until the birth of the baby girl, nicknamed Baby M by the media to shroud her identity. After giving birth, Mary Beth wanted to keep the child, as she said she looked like her own daughter Tuesday. Naturally, the Sterns sued, and while a lower court upheld their contract, the New Jersey Supreme Court called it an affront to public policy and compensation for such a service illegal, perhaps criminal, and potentially degrading to women. But they did ultimately give custody of baby M to the Sterns, who the court believed had the best interests for the baby girl at heart. Despite the traction Baby M's case received, the U.S. has refused to make laws concerning surrogacy on a federal level. It's left up to the states, which vary in friendliness to the practice. The tolerance towards surrogacy is represented by colors in this infographic. Dark green states permit surrogacy for all parents, and both parents are named on the birth certificate. Lighter green states allow surrogacy, but the results may be dependent on different factors or venues. In some of these states, additional post-birth legal procedure is required. Yellow denotes that surrogacy is practiced, but there are possible legal difficulties to overcome, or results may be inconsistent. Orange is essentially a stricter version of yellow. Red states prohibit compensated surrogacy contracts, or they don't allow birth certificates naming both parents. For some states like California and Oregon that are surrogate friendly, many couples who can't contract surrogates in their state will either travel to those states or contact women from those states. New York is one of the states that bans commercial surrogacy, which means that a woman can volunteer to be a surrogate but cannot be compensated for her efforts. There's currently legislation being written to reverse these laws, but many groups oppose the change, some on the basis of religious intolerance and fear of the gays, but other groups such as feminist and human rights campaigns protest surrogacy on the basis of its damage to women. The map also differs for gay versus heterosexual couples, but not by much. 2017 was rife with TV shows chock full of hard truths, and The Handmaid's Tale is no exception. This TV show has sparked a larger conversation surrounding the experience and nature of coercive surrogacy. Many groups, like previously mentioned, have been making efforts to limit and outlaw the practice. Excluding the religious organizations, the basis for their argument is that surrogacy commodifies women and can take advantage of those with lower socioeconomic status looking for a new source of income. This isn't an unheard of or uncommon problem. The demand for surrogates and babies via IVF is high, and there's a black market for surrogates similar to the black market for organs. Similar to the organ market, agencies find women in lower income countries, India is a popular recruitment site, and coerce them into becoming surrogates. Oftentimes, these women are promised compensation on top of money for medical bills and postpartum treatment, similar to those that donate their organs. However, they're left with much less than they were promised by the agencies. The baby is whisked away, and the birth mothers have no idea what happens to them. One mother described feeling guilty because she didn't know where the baby was going or if it will be safe. So, what does healthy surrogacy look like in the United States? To start, the screening process for surrogates is very rigorous. As you can see from the infographic, there are numerous requirements for women seeking to become surrogates, including but not limited to stipulations like having a good support system, at least one psychological evaluation, a previous child or children by a third party uninvolved in the surrogacy process, and location and health requirements. Once she is approved, chosen, and inseminated, she then spends the next 9 months updating the parents on development, and they help her keep track of deadlines and appointments. After birth, the parents are given the baby. Depending on the contract, the babies can be given away 3 hours post birth or immediately. Many surrogates maintain they remain friends with the families they cared for because, like in the book Birthing a Mother, couples in the market want to and do connect with the carrier of their child. Amy Skalazinski, who has been a surrogate twice now, wrote an article for the NY Post about her experiences. She speaks to the bond she's formed with both couples who are gay. When it came time to give birth the first time, she told the OBGYN to take the baby right away because she was afraid of becoming attached. But when the baby did cry out, she described it like hearing the neighbor's kid cry. She claimed she thought it would have been harder if she hadn't bonded with the dads. Surrogacy as an option for gay couples has gained more traction in the past few years. The Growing Generations Agency in Los Angeles was initially formed to give gay men and lesbian women the opportunity to start a family. Currently, 75% of their clientele are in the LGBTQ community. The agency has strict rules to make the relationship between potential parents and birth mother as smooth as possible. They refuse to allow the surrogate to also be the egg donor to prevent any attachments on the basis of biology, and they only employ surrogates that are mothers already. Famous gay couple Todd Holland and Scotch Ellis Loring went through the Growing Generations agency with their surrogate, Christy Rudd. They initially used 3 zygotes in the hope one would take and were surprised when all 3 did. They maintain that they love Christy and want to keep her in their lives and their babies' lives as much as possible. I saw a similar attitude from a gay couple towards their surrogate on the blog My Body, Their Baby I discovered when we researched surrogacy blogs in class. These pictures are from that blog, run by a woman named Andrea. Even after giving birth to both boys, she spends time with the families, both by herself and with her own family. I definitely see a correlation between the closeness of intended couple and surrogate and the sexuality and gender of that couple. It seems to me that heterosexual couples have more to lose as society tells them they should be able to have children without complication, and many of them exhaust all options before turning to surrogacy. The mother, especially herself, can feel a sense of guilt at her inability to conceive and carry the baby. With gay men, however, there is no societal push making you feel inadequate for your lack of procreational abilities, and no guilt at your bodily insufficiencies. Unfortunately, there's very little literature on the experience of lesbian couples in surrogacy. I personally couldn't find any blogs or stories online at all. I think this is partially due to the lower likelihood of both women being unable to carry a fetus. I think the place I found the most honest and real depictions of surrogacy have been from blog posts online. These photos are from the blog Our Story Chrissy and Lee, a couple that opted to use a third party, and it details their experience with their surrogate, who they have very positive feelings towards. They spoke to the frustration and sadness of infertility and the struggle to afford a gestational experience, but also to the happiness they found with their surrogate Heather and her wife Stephanie. They described the process as perfect can be after connecting with Heather, and now empower others through support groups they had created in addition to plans to lobby Congress for adoption and IVF tax credits. Researching and curating this project on surrogacy in America was really interesting. Having read Birthing a Mother and exploring that narrative first, it allowed me to see the differences between the two cultures more clearly. In the U.S. context, I don't see the same language being used by your U.S. surrogates as we did by the Jewish-Israeli surrogates. The focus is more on seeing the baby as inherently belonging to the intended couple, not unlike a renter in the womb, as opposed to the complete dissociation surrogates were able to perform with their pregnant bodies to the degree that Jewish Israeli women were able to do. However, both maintained strict mental barriers to prevent attachment to the growing fetus and maintain a close connection with the intended parents. As the media is incredibly skewed and celebrities aren't open with their own battles, understandably so, I think credit for verbalizing and spreading the joy surrogacy can provide is due to the women that have taken to the internet in droves to share their experience. I hope you enjoyed my project, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to immerse myself in the cultures of pregnancy, birth, and postpartum this semester.